So today we're focusing on the fifth source of Unitarian Universalism. That means we have one more source to go. That's next week. And we will have made it through all six. So the fifth source of Unitarian Universalism, that one of the great wells from which we get to draw our spirituality, our wisdom, our knowledge, that source is humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. And like most of our principles and sources, they are quite a mouthful. So to provide a little illumination and something I reluctantly call something I would say is from the UU Catechism, although we don't really have a catechism. But this is more from Forest Church. You might remember a few weeks ago we talked about his Cathedral of the World. Well, this is another piece he wrote about our fifth source. It's called Beyond Idolatry, but it's really important because it addresses more than just humanism and UUism. It just gives you a great perspective, really, about what we're all about. So here we go. In 1933, a group of religious humanists, most of whom were from the Chicago area, and many of whom were Unitarian, together composed a brief document outlining the basic principles of humanism. It was not designed as an anti-religious statement, but as a testament to the religious spirit as it might best be expressed in our own time. The manifesto says, "The time has come for widespread recognition of the radical changes in religious beliefs throughout the modern world. The time is past for mere revision of traditional attitudes. Science and economic change have disrupted the old beliefs. Religions of the world over are under the necessity of coming to terms with new conditions created by a vastly increased knowledge and experience. In every field of human activity, the vital movement is now in the direction of a candid and explicit humanism." So, the word humanism is blasphemy to many deeply religious people, even today, more than 80 years after that original humanist manifesto was written. You know, humanism to many people suggests godlessness and sacrilege and rampant immorality. Yet the Humanist Manifesto is actually a profoundly spiritual document. Yes, it rejects superstition while calling for the exercise of reason in matters of faith, but it also expresses deep commitment to the welfare of all. Far from being anti-religious, this manifesto proclaimed, "Today our larger understanding of the universe, our scientific achievements, and our deeper appreciation of the kinship of all people have created a situation which requires a new statement of the means and purposes of religion, meaning that we are responsible for our own destiny and capable of making that destiny better." So the manifesto continues, "The goal of humanism is a free and universal society in which people voluntarily and intelligently cooperate for the common good," the signers wrote. "Humanists demand a shared life in a shared world. We assert that humanism will affirm life rather than deny it, seek to elicit the possibilities of life, not flee from it, and endeavor to establish the conditions of a satisfactory life for all, not merely for a few." So much for that rampant immorality. So the document was subsequently revised in the second Humanist Manifesto, or I like to call it the first sequel, and it was signed in 1970. Both statements exemplify our fifth source of faith, the humanist teachings that counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against the idolatries of the mind and spirit. So Forest Church says the inclusion of a warning against idolatries of the mind and spirit is not an afterthought. It's absolutely critical to the integrity of our faith, protecting even science and rationalism from becoming idols. Rationalism as an idol easily becomes rationalization. Science and technology without awe and humility about how they are used too easily become threats to both nature and humanity, as our nuclear age has shown, And I'll add, about 30 years later after this was written, climate change as well. Mere freedom from traditional theistic belief does not guarantee just or responsible social behavior. Idolizing such freedom can lead either to self-absorption and possessive individualism, or to the many idolatries promoted by consumerism and by manipulative would-be messiahs. Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams wrote that idolatry occurs when a social movement adopts as the center of loyalty an idol, a segment of reality torn away from the context of universality, an inflated, misplaced abstraction made into an absolute. So James Luther Adams, he lived in Germany during the 1930s, and he watched with horror as Nazi propaganda about the greatness of German humanism co-opted many of the most humanistic religious liberals. So that's a warning if you've ever heard one. The only effective religious resistance to the powers and principalities of evil came from neo-Orthodox stalwarts such as Karl Barth and the Christian martyr Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Given the dangers of idolatry, it may be our own very liberal virtues, the things of which we are most proud, that are likely to betray us. When reason is reduced to rationality, it too can become an idol. We lose track of the spirit, even of such documents as the Humanist Manifesto itself, by focusing on the letter of the law. The more legalistic thinkers among us believe that in order to be intellectually legitimate, any opinion we hold, religious or otherwise, must be verifiable as fact. Such people resemble fundamentalists of the right. They are simply the fundamentalists of the left. Such people hold that anything that is not rational is irrational and therefore to be rejected. A sound reason knows its own limitations. It suggests that beyond the rational lies a trans-rational realm. We enter it in our dreams. We enter this trans-rational realm in moments of worship. We enter it singing when the tunes are good, even if the words are not. We enter the trans-rational realm when we dance and stargaze. We break through to a transitional realm beyond knowing or naming. By ignoring this reality in a narrow attempt to guard the portals of rationality against all intruders, we betray the teachings of both reason and science, which together with our rejection of idolatry comprise the wellspring of our faith's fifth source. Many leading scientists are far ahead of us in this regard. Recent discoveries in math and cell biology and quantum physics make no apparent sense, at least not according to the known canons of rationality. In probing the mysteries of the universe and then the mind, researchers on the edge of discovery find themselves moving freely between the rational and the trans-rational realms. The physicist Alan Lightman writes, "Of all people today, I think scientists have the deepest faith in the unseen world. The greater the scientist, the deeper his or her faith." So since the Humanist Manifesto was written, scientific breakthroughs have dramatically expanded our perspective, both of the universe and of our relationship to it. We have seen stunning pictures from space, the Earth, the blue-green and marbled with clouds rising over the moon's horizon. Never before has the beauty of our ecosystem been more graphically portrayed. New research in biology suggests that life on Earth is far more interdependent and organically related than we might ever have imagined. We are part of one another, not only in a rhetorical and ethical sense, but also in a literal sense. The kinship of all is more than a dream, it is a reality. Not only are all people intimately related, but every living thing on this planet is kin to every other, not so much in a great chain of being as in an intricate, interdependent, and fragile web. Today, our challenge is to co-develop what Dr. King called the beloved community, the work of love being shared and justice being done in a realm where that which is greater than all is present in each. According to the level of cooperation we achieve with one another, and with that which is in each of us, but greater than all of us, we shall either thrive or perish. Our religious challenge is greater than ever. We must employ our reason and the insights of science, mindful of the dangers of idolatry, to increase our understanding and cultivate the garden of the Spirit in ways undreamed of before. We must not only nurture a deeper appreciation for the wonder and majesty of life, but renew our sense of responsibility for how the story we are telling will finally turn out. Okay, that's the end. That was long. That was a lot. Some of these things are easier to read than to speak. But so now I'll talk to you for a bit, give you a break. Humanism is actually one of the main things that attracted me to Unitarian Universalism. But at the time I was looking, I didn't know I was looking for a humanist church. I didn't really even know what that was. But a lot of the parts I really liked about UU Church, I realized many, many years later, had to do with the humanist perspective of our faith tradition. And you know, I was so excited, like many UUs often say, that I didn't have to check my brain at the door of the church. I didn't have to profess beliefs in things I was pretty sure never happened, or scriptures that I'm pretty sure were the musings of mere mortals like myself. I don't have to worry about my religion conflicting with science or current knowledge on just about anything. And to me, that was a huge relief. Unitarian Universalism was a religion I could honestly embrace with my whole self, and I could be all in. You know, after all, I wasn't really a fan of waiting for God to take action, and I wasn't really willing to take the chance on a glorious afterlife. I like that UUism is focused on the here and now and what we human beings can do to solve the world's problems, most of which are actually created by human beings themselves. And as my UU faith has developed over the years, I now see humanism as the foundation of my personal theology. It's not the be-all and the end-all of my theology, but it's where I find that solid home base from which to explore myself and the world and relationships and other theologies that build upon one another to provide me with hope, you know, and meaning and a sense of purpose and a sense of connection. So today I thought I'd share a little bit about what I call my own humanist theology. It's just only a part of my theological story, but I thought I'd tell it with a couple of goals in mind. First, I want to give you an idea of what humanist theology might look like, because I'm sure many people are thinking, humanist theology, that's a contradiction in terms, right? But I'd also like to provide an example of how we as UUs can actually build our own theology from many sources available to us. Because really one of the main purposes of theology, or religion for that matter, is to find a source of hope and meaning in life. And you know, we do this because life is hard. Life is painful. Life is mysterious. And you know, inquiring minds like ours, we, and everybody else for that matter, we want answers to these mysteries, right? We want to know why we're here. We want to know how we got here. We want to know what's going to happen after we leave here. And we want to know how to navigate this ultimately really confusing thing called human existence. And although humanism doesn't offer the definitive answers that some are seeking, there are answers to be found in humanism. So I'm going to share with you about 3 humanistic ways that I find hope and meaning. So one thing that gives me hope that is pretty humanistic is human resilience. People are resilient. You know, see, growing up, I really thought that everything in my life depended on the choices I made and the work I did. I was in for quite a surprise later in life, right? I thought when we made good choices, things would be good, and if we made bad choices, well, you might not ever be able to recover from that. But, you know, this philosophy has some good points. You know, I did the work, I followed the rules. It kept me out of a lot of trouble I could have been in as a young person. But the idea that we have a great life just if we try hard and make the right decisions, I mean, that's a big fairy tale, isn't it? Because sometimes things happen that are way, way, way beyond our control. I mean, life is so much more complicated and random than that. And, you know, some of my bad decisions or when bad things happen beyond my control, I've really learned and grown from a lot of those, as I'm sure many people have. And then other times when I did everything right, Well, the outcome didn't live up to my expectations. So seeing life as something we have absolute control over is pretty much untrue and unhealthy. But yet I often catch myself judging the quality of my selfhood and my existence by my most external success or failure, or the latest good or bad thing that's happened to me. But as I grow, I'm learning that it's not about what happens or what I can control what happens. What matters most of all is how I respond to what happens. I find hope in the fact that we all have power to create our lives anew each and every day by being open to new possibilities and open to our capacity for renewal and resilience and fresh starts and what I like to refer to as numerous do-overs. Even when we can't change our situations, and there are some really bad situations we can't change, we can at least change our perspective and our attitude and our response. This idea of human resilience and renewal can be found in Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams' fifth smooth stone of liberal religion, which begs a whole explanation. Did five smooth stones sound familiar to anyone, James Luther Adams? Okay, youth, you learned about it in leadership school. I'm putting him on the spot. So, 20th century Unitarian theologian. He developed the five characteristics of liberal religion. He called them the smooth stones. Because who used the smooth stones in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Bible? Who used smooth stones? David to knock down Goliath, right? So these smooth stones, I like this image because they're cool, because they're like things you can just slingshot at a giant and take them down, right? So the one that was brought to mind for me is the fifth smooth stone, which is really all about hope. Adams said about the fifth stone, he said, religious liberalism holds that the resources that are available for the achievement of meaning change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism, right? Ultimate optimism, we call that hope. Because human beings have the capacity and the resources to change and improve both their internal and external situations, they have reason to be optimistic. We can change, so therefore we can be hopeful. It is a hope, not a wimpy hope, but it's hope based on effort and courage and the acceptance that bad things do happen. But ultimately, and at the end of the day, and despite all of that bad stuff out there, we still have the power to begin our lives anew, even if it's only a change in perspective or attitude. So my first source of hope, and that was the longest one, the other two are shorter, my first source of hope is what? Human resilience, humanistic. My second humanistic source of hope recognizes that in our culture that values independence and individualism, we often seem to be living in greater and greater isolation. But you know what? I imagine loneliness as a perfectly curable epidemic. One of my favorite UU hymnal readings is from Wayne Arneson. He says, "Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone." I've seen time and time again in my own life and in the lives of others, when we become aware of and involved in the lives around us, when we participate in supportive community, it can be absolutely transformational. The ability of caring communities to change the lives of people willing to be transformed give me hope. We have each other to turn to. That is a humanistic idea. Now, my third source of hope has to do with love. Not the first thing you think of when you think of humanism, but I'm going to argue that point. Love is a renewable resource. You know, people often feel unloved. We often feel like we're not getting the right, healthy kind of love. We're not getting the unconditional love that fulfills us and allows us to be our true and best selves. Families don't always love us the way we want, and partners and friends don't always love us the way we want. But that's no reason to give up on love. Love is so much bigger than all of that. And love, it doesn't have to be limited, to family and intimate relationships. The universe provides many, many things to love. It provides nature, it provides animals, and the miracle of our very existence. And most importantly, it provides the ability for us to love ourselves. Losses of loved ones through death or broken relationships are some of the most painful things people have to endure. We tend to believe that when love dies with a relationship or a person, we believe that it goes away forever. But I don't think so. I don't think it goes away. I don't think it's ever wasted. Despite missing a loved one through death, the love is still there. It's a bottomless well to draw on forever. And love that was given in a relationship that ultimately ends is not love wasted either. It's still a gift to the universe. And love continues to exist so we can channel it into a new direction, or every direction. Love is always there to be given as an inexhaustible, ever-renewable resource. The idea that love never shrinks or goes away and is in total abundance for the potential giver and the receiver gives me hope. And although love as a source of hope is a kind of touchy-feely idea and not considered perfectly rational, rationality and love don't always really go together, but I still think love is a very humanistic concept because it's a human quality. We don't need a deity to love one another, right? It's a human thing. It's an underdeveloped one in human beings, I would say, and it's one that we should put some effort into improving. So that's 3 examples of how I use humanism in my theology that gives me hope and meaning and a little endurance in my life. And it's our humanist heritage. It's a rich, really rich and full of theological possibilities to derive hope and meaning and purpose in life. Humanism is a reality-based and rational perspective, and when held in balance with what Forrest Church called the trans-rational, it can provide a very, very affirming life-affirming worldview. But if there's one thing we really need to work on regarding the humanist tradition, it's that as humanists, we must articulate and practice what we stand for and what we believe, rather than what we don't believe. At times, humanism in practice has sunken into religion bashing, a practice that's not very interesting, useful, or inspiring. I'd rather hear about what gives a humanist hope and meaning in their life, much rather than what they don't believe in. So I'll ask you today, as we end, to think about the role of humanism in your own personal theology, in your religion, and in your worldview. How might it bring hope and meaning to your life? Blessed be.